Dr. Mehta, my number came. Okay, let me start with a quote from great English philosopher. He who knows only his one side of the case knows little of that. In simple English, it means that you have to know both sides of the story. Medical, that's why we started with medical, and now it comes the surgical. So if you know both the medical management and surgical management, you are advised to treat obesity. Now, two associations in the world has declared obesity as a chronic disease. 3 months before, Canadian Medical Association joined American Medical Association. Hopefully this list will grow with time. Now, coming to the obesity, a lot of slides might be duplicated here. I will try to avoid them. Now, complications, it affects the whole body. It can cause metabolic complications, structural, inflammatory, degenerative, neoplastic, and psychological. I'll be concentrating on metabolic aspect today. So there are different definitions, more than 30 I think, metabolic syndrome, which was used to be called as syndrome X or deadly quadrate. I have chosen the AACE definitions, American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, which is simple and simple to follow. Means central obesity with one of these following raised triglyceride levels or reduced HDL levels, increased blood pressure or elevated fasting blood glucose levels. Now, in metabolic syndrome, obesity is the only modifiable component of this syndrome and primary target for intervention. If we target obesity, we can target and improve other associated conditions also, which we have seen down with other presenters. Now, surgery has taken the central role in obese patients, especially with poor responses to less invasive intervention. Let me state this slide that you see the weight loss importance, how it affects. 1% decrease in the body weight of obese people can decrease 1 millimeter of systolic blood pressure and 2 millimeter of diastolic blood pressure. Similarly, 10% reduction in body weight, significant effect on 20% reduction in cardiovascular disease risk. So weight loss, whether it's through the medical management or through surgical management, is very important varying on the health of the person. We were discussing before also, healthy obesity. Is it something like that? I don't believe this, because if you feel that patient is obese and has no disease, he is a healthy obese, so why should he go for surgery or other intervention? So different studies have shown us, like if you see this, about 50% of people, over the period of time, they develop metabolic risk factors, if there is no intervention done. Now, healthy obesity, with metabolically healthy people or abnormal people, cardiovascular disease risk increases with time. Now with this note, let's come to the bariatric surgical part. I will not be discussing details of surgeries, but details of bariatric surgery, how it affects the metabolic syndrome in the body. Now as we discussed already, that it's a multidisciplinary approach. All the team members, they participate before we take the patient on the surgical table. Number of bariatric surgeries has increased tremendously for last for a few years, and there is a reason for that. One is that obesity has become pandemic; it has increased all over the world in different countries. And secondly is that it works. I will not go into the details of this system, but you can see that every comorbidity, every organ is getting improved after bariatric surgery. And the third reason for becoming more popular surgery is introduction of laparoscopic technique. Laparoscopic technique has made surgery very, very safe. So these are the mainstream procedures: gastric banding, vertical sleeve gastrectomy, and the Reuben pipe gastric bypass, which is a combination of restriction and malabsorption. And there is one more surgery, it's called duodenal switch. I don't practice, and most of the surgeons, they don't practice except in institutional levels, because the malabsorptive component is very, very high. So you need very strict follow-up and very overcare for these kind of patients. Technically, you can see that low, medium and high complexity of the surgery. So this is the band, then there is the sleeve, and then there is the bypass, and then there is the BPD. This was the situation in 2005. Gastric band was on the top. And then Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, and then sleeve and BPD. And in 2015, the things have changed. Sleeve has increased in number, and now it has become number one in the most popular surgery. Before I used to do 6 to 7 out of 10 cases Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. But now out of 10, 9 cases are coming for sleeve. Even if I explain, they intend to go for sleeve. Maybe the patient thinks that it's more physiological. This is the first data has come out about the incidence, and the sleeve is becoming very popular. You can see it. It started crossing the gastric band around 2011, and now 2013 it has crossed all the procedures and is the number one surgery overall the world. Incidence wise, you can see sleeve gastrectomy is 51% now. Gastric band incidence has gone very severely down. Duodenal switch is maintaining the same around 10%, and gastric bypass is around quarter of the 25%. Now let's change the name from bariatric surgery to metabolic surgery. Now you can see the same surgical procedures are showing remission of diabetes. We are concentrating more on diabetes, but we'll address the hypertension as well as dyslipidemia also. But this is the most modifiable component to surgery. So you can see gastric band is low resolution, but 46%. Sleeve gastrectomy 60 to 70% takes medium time, and then 84 very quick, and duodenal switch 95%. Metabolically, if you ask, duodenal switch is the crown king. Almost 100% the diabetes remission happens. But it has its own one problem, that's why it's not become popular. Now, what's the name, whether it's a metabolic surgery or weight loss surgery? The same thing I'm discussing, on one side for weight loss, one side for metabolic. Let's see the differences. In bariatric, the purpose is weight loss, whereas in metabolic surgery, the purpose is glycemic and metabolic control, cardiovascular risk reduction. Indication BMI-centric is bariatric, whereas metabolic is uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, insulin resistance, NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, uncontrolled metabolic parameters, etc. Operations traditionally, which we discussed just now, Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, sleeve gastrectomy, BPD, and gastric band. For metabolic, these surgeries are useful and very successful, but the new surgeries are coming up directed mainly to the metabolic part, which is islet transposition, DJB, and endoscopic duodenal sleeve, which my colleague Dr. Philippos discussed also before. Now, measures of outcome in bariatric, we strictly go with the weight loss. In metabolic part, of course, we go for the blood pressure improvement, blood glucose improvement, and mechanism of actions. Bariatric is centered on restriction as well as malabsorption. But in metabolic part, it's a complex neuroendocrine, several mechanisms are playing a role, which we will see during my presentation. History started with 1900 when they did gastrectomy and they found diabetes improvement. So the interest started. In 1981, Bittner reported diabetes remission after subtotal gastrectomy, and then the main study came in 1995 in Anderson surgery by Powys group. 608 patients. 54% of patients were diabetes or impaired glucose tolerance in this study. And you see the diabetes resolved in 91% of patients. But what was the main important in this study? It was gastric bypass, which could keep it under control diabetes for 14 long years. And serum glucose improved just a few days after surgery without any significant weight loss. So weight loss was playing a role, but independent mechanisms were also playing a role. So this study put metabolic part of the surgical portion on the horizon for the other people to follow. Now, key question is, does surgery achieve sustainable weight loss? Second is, does surgery achieve sustainable metabolic disease remission? The answer is yes to both the questions. We will see now. Now you can see regarding weight loss, it's a procedure specific. Gastric bypass from sleep, faster in a few months, 10 to 15 pounds, and then slows down. And then the plateau is around 1.5 years. In gastric band, it's more slow, plateau is around 2 years. You can see that gastric bypass 60 to 85% of weight loss, and then in stabilization, sleeve gastrectomy 55 to 80. So nearly these two procedures are going near to each other in our outcomes. There are some differences, I will let you know. Now, before we talk about diabetes, let's talk about hypertension and dyslipidemia. As per American College of Surgeons Bariatric Surgery Center Network, hypertension remission, we never use the word cure because it can come back again, so the remission is the proper word. Remission of hypertension at 1 year in 79% of women by gastric bypass, 68% in sleep, and 44% in gastric band. Dyslipidemia from 60 to 100%. They no longer require lipid lowering medications. Now, diabetes part, I think the previous presenter also presented the slide in a different way. 3 blind studies have been done. One is Dixon in 2008, Schauer in 2012, and Mingrone in 2012 again. And all have shown that the surgery results exceeds far, far better than any medical therapy for these kind of patients. Basically, if you go to the diabetes, it has problems with insulin sensitivity. There is a progressive beta cell dysfunction and gastrointestinal factors, GLP-1 and GIP, called incretins. They also have some problem in obese patients. Now, incretins, these are GLP-1 and GIP, which are secreted from the intestine. So both are released in response to food ingestion. Once you take food, these factors, they come out from the intestine. And both potentiate glucose-dependent insulin response. About 50 to 60% of insulin secretion is from the incretin effect in the body. Now, in type 2 diabetes with obesity, this is blunted. So these are the incretins, which have a very significant role. K cells coming from the proximal intestine, L cell, distal intestine, secretes GPL, GP1. Now, gut peptides have a lot of role in energy balance. Obesity is shifting from gross level to micro level now, even to the neuroscience, to the peptides. So you can see a lot of the gut is acting as a neuroendocrine organ. A lot of peptides are coming out in response to the food. And these are signaling to the brain, which can cut down the food, which can have energy expenditure also. So a lot of role is coming up and a lot of experiments are going on these things. In gut peptides, overall we can divide into 2 groups. One group is which causes feeding inhibitory peptides within meal satiety actions. Means when the meal is you are eating, these gut peptides, cholecystokinin, amylin and glucagon, can give a signal to the brain to stop eating, when to stop eating. So it's within the same meal satiety. Whereas other group like GLP-1 and peptide PYY, they cause across meal satiety overall. Overall in the day, how much you will eat, how much satiety will come. So the full meals they will intake into control. Now, based upon these peptides, 2 hypotheses have been formulated, and both we have seen in different experiments both are working. I personally like the hand-gut hypothesis over the foregut, but in foregut hypothesis, it says that lack of stimulation of the foregut due to absence of food. Now, Dr. Philippos was telling, putting the sleeve in that endoscopically, so that doesn't allow food contact with the jejunum. So the foregut theory starts coming into the work. Hindgut theory is overstimulation of hindgut due to rapid exposure of partially digested food. If food quickly goes into the hindgut, the PYY and GLP get stimulated. So as I told upper the GI tract diversion has weight loss independent therapeutic effects on 2 major factors involved in the pathogenesis of diabetes. One is beta cell function and other is insulin action. This Rubino group did a good experiments on mouses and all that and came out with a handgun theory. It says, not handgun. It says that there is an anti-threatening signal coming from the jejunum. If you avoid the food contact with the foregut, the anti-threatening signals disappears and the disturbance of the incretin bulk in the body becomes back to normal. And that's how the diabetes improves. Now, coming to the evidence-based medicine, we have to show a lot of evidence to confirm all these things. A lot of slides has gone back, so I'll skip few ones. Now, coming to the diabetes definition of cure, from surgically point, we have a partial remission, complete remission, and we have a prolonged remission. Partial remission, at least for 1 year duration. HbA1 should be less than 6.5 and fasting glucose should be between 5.6 to 6.9. If HbA1c below 6 and fasting glucose below 5.6 millimole, it's a complete remission. No medicine to be taken up, anti-diabetic, and it should maintain for 1 year. Then we put the patient into complete remission. And the prolonged remission is about 5 years, where the different surgical techniques are coming into the play. Some techniques are having relapse early, some techniques are having relapse very late. You can see that surgery is done within 15 days. You see the change. The serum glucose is 166 to 118. Serum insulin from 41 to 26, and HOMA-IR is from 17 to 7.5. So within 15 days, weight loss is not much, but all the improvements starts coming after surgery. This is another slide which shows all the three: medical therapy, gastric bypass, and BPD comparison. SOS mentioned before. I am mentioning again because this was the largest study and the longest study, 20 years now completed, and it shows that the improvement surgically treated patients are benefiting in all the aspects of the comorbidities. This shows the different procedures and how they are improving the comorbidities. You can see down all the four. This is a beautiful slide which shows band, bypass, and BPD and the improvement of diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and percent excess weight loss. Beautiful BPD, but as I mentioned, due to different severe malabsorption, is not the current, is not very popular solution. So number 2 comes the bypass. Same, the best is BPD and bypass. Now I want to put a comment on insulin sensitivity after bariatric surgery. There are two kinds of insulin sensitivity. One is peripheral and one is hepatic one. So the peripheral insulin sensitivity does not improve immediately after bariatric surgery, but increases in a weight-dependent manner after substantial weight loss, at least 10%. Then the role of insulin sensitivity in periphery starts coming up. But Roux-en-Y, sleeve and bypass, all in this aspect, they all are equal because it's weight-dependent. But the other insulin sensitivity, basal, hepatic, endogenous glucose production may improve very rapidly following surgery in a weight-independent manner. Here the surgical part, like bypass, they come into play more than the band. Restrictive plays nil, but the malabsorptive parts, they play more in this. Now coming to the mechanisms, one by one, most popular bypass and the sleeve I will discuss. A quick discussion about that. Now mechanism, we made a small pouch, around 30 to 50 ml. So it's a restrictive part. Ghrelin goes down, so anorexigenic effect comes up, and then we are bypassing food from the. So as we discussed, forward theory, no contact of food, so forward theory acts, and then faster delivery into the last part of the intestine, hindgut theory acts, and the GLPs they get starts releasing up, and then there is some part of malabsorption. So that's how the gastric bypass affects the weight loss as well as effect on the diabetes and hypertension. Now, how does the sleeve work? Sleeve, we are not bypassing the intestine, but still it works like bypass. There are two kinds, hormonal changes as well as hindgut theory. Now, marked reduction in fasting ghrelin because we are cutting the fundus part of the stomach. So, this has its own effect. on the sedentary also. Handguard theory, but we are not bypassing, still the handguard is working because you can see Marisa from Greece is a good study done by them, and it shows that stomach empties its contents rapidly into the intestine. So if rapidly into the intestine goes to the hindgut, and that's how the hindgut theory starts working, and the incretin effects becomes potent. Beside this, there is a caloric restriction. Carbohydrate control, calorie restricted diet produces up to 40% improvement in insulin resistance. In the perioperative period, calorie intake dramatically is reduced after surgery. So we all know that. Now, changing in eating behavior. This is very interesting. The food choices have been studied in rats. It is found post-sleep gastrectomy, the rats prefer to choose low-fat and they avoid calorie-dense diets. They will not take ice creams. So this is a change coming up, and taste equity changes. Even the patients also, human beings also, their threshold for having the perception of sweetness at lower threshold starts coming up after surgery. Similarly, it can have a negative effect also, like aversion to certain foods promotes development of maladaptive eating behaviors also. Other thing very interesting is coming up. A lot of experiments are going on is bile acids. LSG as well as the sleep gastrectomy as well as bypass both have shown that the bile acids after surgery they go higher levels in the blood. It's not due to the reabsorption, due to the lower uptake of the liver. Now how it is happening, a lot of experiments are coming up. But at this stage, the role of bile acids is not very confirmed. Binding of bile acids is nuclear receptor FXR. This role is coming up. Adipose tissue, as we know that they are secreting more than 30 cytokines, and most of them are causing inflammation in the body, chronic inflammation. And after bariatric surgery, the cytokines get lowered down, especially TNF, interleukin, and the leptin. Now, gastrointestinal microflora, the colon, the human colon is having 1,036,000 of microflora, and a lot of changes comes up after surgical. The role of this microflora and the role of bile acids is under still experiment, and a lot of encouraging results are coming up. Now let's summarize how does surgery works. So you can see foregut exclusion, hindgut delivery, so hindgut theory, altered neurocentric anatomy, circulating factors like gut hormones, bile acids we discussed, microbiome, entroplasty. In bypass, the intestine thickness and the villi becomes very prominent and now number increases. It has its own energy expenditure per day. So that also causes loss of weight. Similarly, changes in the food intake, changes in energy expenditure, and qualitative change in metabolism. All this play how the surgery works to this complex mechanism of weight loss and improvement in all the metabolic diseases. So let's summarize once again. The peripheral sensitivity improves insulin only after significant weight loss, as I told before, and is determined largely by degree of weight loss, while hepatic insulin sensitivity may improve acutely, weight independent. There are differences in the postprandial secretions of insulin, GLP-1 and glucose between Roux-en-Y bypass and sleep gastrectomy versus gastric band restrictive, that are likely due to rapid transit of nutrients and entroplasty rather than bypass. Bile acids increase with bypass procedures, but their overall contribution to improved insulin sensitivity and secretion after substantial weight loss in humans is uncertain at this stage. Caloric restriction in itself can mimic many of the metabolic effects of surgical intervention. So these are the established surgeries, but man keeps looking for better and best. So these are the new on the horizon. From metabolic point of view, this is ideal transposition. We cut a loop and we cut from here and we transposition ideal here, so that the food comes in sensor of the hand at earlier portion. And then there is a DGB, duodenal bypass. Again, bypassing the duodenum. And together already Dr. Philip discussed. These are the experiments underway. The first randomized trial was started, but after 1 year it has been aborted. due to a lot of hepatic abscess. In Israel, very interesting thing is coming up is called Metabolic Shield. To avoid what problems are coming with the head, they are working on that Metabolic Shield on 4-bed theory to exclude contact of food with the jejunum. Again, this Rubino, they did a lot of experiments and they came out that individuals with obesity who undergo bariatric surgery are much less likely to develop type 2 diabetes mellitus than are those receiving routine care. So it has a prophylactic value also, especially if you have a family history of diabetes and you are obese. Now let me conclude my talk. Conclusion: resolution of diabetes appears to be a multifactorial process. Increased hepatic insulin sensitivity due to caloric restriction and improved beta cell function. Secondary to increased enterohormones caused by altered exposure of distal small intestine to nutrients. Very common statement. Later on, changes of glucose hemostasis are likely due to weight loss and improvement of peripheral skeletal sensitivity. When free fatty acids goes down, skeletal muscles receptors numbers increases, and with weight loss, the mitochondrial function improves, and with all these things, the insulin resistance goes down. Bariatric surgery, I can conclude that is very effective for managing metabolic syndrome, especially diabetes, responds well to these procedures. Thank you very much.
Questions now? 5 minutes for questions. Please.
We can bring mic to them.
Usually how you are categorized?
Give a long lesson.
Thank you very much for the lecture. I'd like to ask you, usually, to get use of your experience, actually, how do you categorize your patients in the clinic? What procedure you are advising them according to the BMI, or do you have any other standards to categorize the patients in the clinic, for which procedure you are giving them the choice for that? And the other question is, what's the difference between the mini bypass for the Roux-en-Y surgery, which is better now for the metabolic surgery outcome?
Yeah. The answer to the first question is that different parameters are there, different factors we consider, different lab reports of different things. But broadly, what I practice is that if patient is having diabetes, hypertension, comorbidity, significantly controlled or uncontrolled, I always suggest to the patient to add malabsorptive part, means Roux-en-Y gastric bypass or mini gastric bypass. If they are clear of all these things, then I prefer to give patient more natural surgery, which they also like it, sleeve gastrectomy. So that's how I divide different two groups. And suppose there is a super obese group, then I try to give again malabsorptive by explaining the patient. And in that case, MGB is a very good choice. Now coming to the second part, difference between Roux-en-Y gastric bypass and mini gastric bypass. Mini gastric bypass is becoming popular nowadays. The basic difference between two, which I have observed with my patients, I am observed giving my patients for the last 1.5 years, mini gastric bypass. Before I never used to do it. So I have seen the resolution of diabetes very fast in mini gastric bypass as compared to Roux-en-Y gastric bypass. Maybe because of more malabsorption in many MGBs there. But the concern against MGB is bioreflex. Still we don't know. Experiments in animals have proved it might be carcinogenic, but in human beings till now it has been